Hey friends, welcome to part 3 of the Tea Paper Alice resin tutorial. This is going to be a very short video, even though this is probably the longest step in this entire process for this design. So once you've completed part 2, you're going to take this type of resin. Well, this is what I use anyways. This is not the resin that I use for my double seals, but it is the resin that I use when I'm doing a top coat on a flat design such as this. We're going to go ahead and pour equal parts into our little med cups. I like to use these med cups again because they're just easy to handle. This is probably the stage that takes the longest in this entire series because what you're going to do is let your resin sit. So after we stir this up really, really well, pour it into our second cup and stir again, we are going to let this resin sit out for probably 25 to 30 minutes before we start using it. If you use it too soon, what'll happen is you'll end up having the resin pour over the sides of your design, and that's definitely not something we want. So if it gets that tacky consistency, it's really easy to kind of move around your design with one of our little stirring sticks. It's just easier to use. So after about 20 minutes, I check the consistency. It's still way too watery to use, so I'm going to let it set for a little bit longer before we attempt to pour. So about 10-15 minutes later, I checked and it looked good. The consistency is tacky enough that we can start our first layer. I normally just put my design on the back of a mold, a silicone mold. When I'm going to do my first layer, it normally holds it into place. For this particular mold, I've used it hundreds of times, so it's just lost all of its stickiness, its grip. So you can see that my design is kind of moving around, but normally that won't happen. You may have something else that you like to use that holds your design in place a little better. The reason why I also like to use these molds, just the back of one, is because in the event that your resin is too watery, it still has that real watery consistency and it does come over the edge. It's real easy just to pick up your design and cut that away. Whereas if you put it on paper or on wood or something like that, then you're going to have you could have some kind of issue trying to get that off. So what we're going to do now is you can see I've added that top layer and it's just a real thin layer. I'm just going to move my resin around, that tacky resin, trying to make sure that all the bubbles, if any, come up or show up. I'm just going to make sure that I move them around to the top. I'm going to use my torch and get rid of those. I would hold your torch probably about 7 to 8 inches away from your design because once you burn your picture, there's no going back. There's no saving that design. You'd have to start fresh, start from the beginning. So I generally keep mine about 7 to 8 inches away from my piece. And I kind of bounce back and forth between both of my designs that I have here, but you may only be working on one. And if that's the case, just take a few moments between your torches and make sure that any bubbles that are still present have risen to the top. Give it a chance to kind of rest and see what you end up with. Sometimes you'll turn your back on it and 5 minutes later there's going to be a big bubble in the middle of it that's snuck up behind her hair or something. So just make sure that you've done that. There is ways to fix bubbles. If you do get a big bubble in yours, there is a way to fix that. And if we ever end up with one, I'll show you that on another video. For this particular video, though, luckily we didn't end up with anything like that. So this ends up really being the most tedious part of this entire process just because it takes so much time just to go through this. I've sped this up to 590 times its actual um, speed. So you just want to go really be prepared for that and not think this is going to be a quick pour and go. Once you're content that you have gotten rid of all of the imperfections, what you can do is cover this, set it somewhere flat, and we're going to come back to it in 48 hours. At a minimum, you want to let this set for 48 hours. Okay, we're coming back. It's been 48 hours. We're going to check our design. Should be hard enough that you don't have fingerprints on top. That's why we wait as long as we do before handling this particular type of resin. It's still workable, so we're going to cut that away. There's a little imperfection I'm going to cut away with my X-Acto knife. But once I get that taken care of, I have two beautiful designs. I'm going to give one of these to my daughter, and I'm going to use the other one. You can put them on phone grips, you can make magnets. Really, there's no end to what you could do with these. They're just really beautiful little pieces. I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial for the tea paper. I'm going to have more coming and hopefully I'll get better at them. Thanks, guys.